Welcome to the Bleed Blue segment, part of the Coach Steve Show, where we talk about everything with Eastern Illinois athletics. It's been mainly Eastern Illinois football because that's all that we have time to do, but this is where we've been breaking down Eastern Illinois football. They just played their rival Illinois State at Illinois State. Eastern could not pull out the win. They lose 31-7, lose the rivalry game. The trophy now goes back to Illinois State after Illinois finally got it back last year for the first time since 2016. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to the Coach Steve Show YouTube channel. Follow it, rate it on Apple and iTunes and even Spotify. Leave a comment in the comment section down below on YouTube. Follow on Twitter or X at Coach_Steve72 and the Coach Steve Show. Instagram, Coach Steve72, the Coach Steve Show, and TikTok, Coach Steve72. There's other content everywhere. So please give it a subscribe. Please, if you're watching it, like, subscribe, helps grow this out. I'll have a playlist titled Bleed Blue, for everything Eastern Illinois athletics. We have not talked about Eastern Illinois for a while. I apologize. I've actually had a couple comments saying, where's the Bleed Blue segment or the thing with Eastern? So appreciate the comments there. Just been busy, guys. Been busy. I try to cover the Chicago Bears, try to cover Illinois athletics. I try to have my own podcast section, and I also coach football. You know, when it says Coach Steve, I'm really a coach. I coach football, and we've had two big time games. Every game is a big time game, but we had our rival game last week, and then we had a very tough game this past Friday. So all my energy was going into those games, and so I tried to keep up with Eastern. I was texting with some of the coaches, trying to get, the feel for what was going on at Eastern. They are now 1-3. They are 0-3 on the road. Two of the losses have come to Power 5 schools. They lost to Illinois in week 1, and they lost to Northwestern last week. And I was going to do a show on that and just did not. So this is going to be a little bit of mixture of Eastern versus Illinois State and kind of what their season has unfolded into a little bit. They're not where they want to be. Coach Wilkerson does not want to be 1-3 right now, but we're going to try to find some positives in this and as they move forward. They lost to Illinois in week 1, 45-0. I thought there was some bright spots in that game. Go listen to that one. Then they got back on track versus Indiana State, and that game was closer than, Eastern wanted it to be or even what it was at one point. Against Northwestern, there was a lot of promise. A lot of people even talked about it. They kept up with Northwestern until they couldn't, but at halftime it was Northwestern 14, Eastern 7. They were moving the ball, they were rallying to the football on defense, and they just kind of slowly lost some big playmakers, and then they were allowing some big plays against Northwestern. But it showed some weaknesses against Northwestern for other teams to show for Eastern Illinois, because Northwestern does have a decently tough schedule, because then the weaknesses that they showed, Northwestern ended up losing to Washington 24-5. What a weird score that is. But it did show that. It showed a lot of weaknesses. Not a lot, but it showed some. Their quarterback, Jack Lash, had to play very, very well against Eastern. And so if you're Eastern walking away from that Northwestern game, you were telling those guys, hey, it took everything that quarterback had to come out and beat us, right? And so you had some positives going into this Illinois State game. Now, Illinois State, I always say this about Eastern, and this is no offense against any other programs at Eastern Illinois. It's when you hear Eastern Illinois, I think of football. They have a rich, long history of football. Just the great names. Coach Boo was there for over 25 years as the head coach. You had Tony Romo come out of there. You had Sean Payton. You had Shanahan come out of there. And so just these big-time names. Jimmy G has come out of there. Coach Wilkerson has come out of there. Dino Babers has coached there before, so when they've come back. So and I could go on and on and on when you think about these names. Now, there's times Eastern Illinois has good basketball teams, obviously. They've had good girls basketball, women's basketball. their baseball team is up and down, but they've had some rich tradition there as well. Volley, like I could go on and on. Their track program is amazing, is amazing track program. But when you hear about it, I think you think of football and probably track because they win the conference almost every single year. So think about when I hear Illinois State, it's the same thing. I know they have times with their basketball program, but when you hear Illinois State, I think of football, right? So these are two rivalries in the same state. They're not that crazy far away from each other. And so these are two rich football programs coming in. Illinois State lost to Iowa. You know, I always like to go through the schedules and see if they're similar. And Illinois State lost to Iowa 40-0, very similar to Eastern when they played Illinois. Illinois State got a win over North Alabama, which is a big win, 24-17. That's a competitive team at North Alabama. Know some coaches there, had their defensive coordinator on. And so I know that they're coached very well. Coach Brent Dearman, is the head coach there. So that's a big time win for Illinois State. Then they go on and beat Western Illinois 51-34. That's a high scoring game. And I had a cornerback coach on from Western. He played at Eastern. Go check that out. So I've had, it's cool when you hear these teams and you've had some coaches come on and talk. So guys, go check out those episodes. A lot of information on those teams and coaches. And so, Illinois State has a very similar schedule to Eastern. And so when you're coming in, you're thinking, okay, this is going to be very competitive. And rewatching the game, Eastern's first drive, they got the ball first. They were marching down the field. And what really hurt Eastern at the end of the day, in my opinion, and again, I'm rewatching it from the TV standpoint. I don't have the film, right? And I would hope, and again, I get along really well with the Eastern Illinois coaches, and they are fantastic coaches. I think a thing that really hurt them was, and it would kind of remind you of the Illinois game. Eastern had the ball and they were moving it, and then they turned the ball over. And this happened here. They marched all the way down to, what were they on, like the 2 maybe or something like that. I don't remember. I remember the play. I just don't remember exactly where on the yardage. They fumble it, and then Illinois State gets it back, and then they do a flea flicker as they were marching down. They do a flea flicker and they score. So you're like, okay, we marched down the field. They were running. The run game was there with their inside zone. They were getting back to that inside zone stuff from the film, from rewatching it. They were getting short pass games. They were doing a little bit of play action RPO stuff. And you're like, oh my gosh, we're looking pretty good right now. If you're Eastern, like we're moving the ball, and then you fumble it going into score. Same kind of thing that happened with Illinois. So then you get the ball back, and they do an RPO type of thing or a play action, throw it over the middle. It tips off our receiver's hands, and it's intercepted. Illinois State marches right down the field. They gave up a couple big plays, these big pass plays, and they score again. So now you're down 14-0 right off the bat in the first quarter. And so if you're Eastern, your play calling, you try to stick to the same game plan. And it seemed like their game plan was to run the ball. They were like, we're going to run from the outside. I don't know what Coach Dickerson, their offense coordinator, I have no idea what the game plan was. When games like this happen, I leave those coaches alone, right? I tell them good luck. They're going to get it. They're going to get it done. They give me a little insight of what they're looking at, but I don't know the whole game plan. But when you're watching it, you're like, oh, they're going to run the football and play action at RPO it, and that's kind of where they're going to live in there. But, those 2 turnovers at the beginning, and then it's hard to come back. You try to stick with your same script. You try to stick with your same game plan. But when you're down 14-0 in the second quarter, you have to adapt that script. You have to adapt a little bit of your game plan. You can't make overall huge tweaks, but you have to start to change it up a little bit, right? If your game plan was to run the football, you could still stick to that. But then you got to be able to get the first downs and move the ball and then stick to the pass. Something else that hurt Eastern was their third down conversions, which they were 2 of 10 and just didn't get it done there. Time of possession, Illinois State killed Eastern. They had the ball for 35 minutes and 57 seconds. Eastern had the ball for 24. And So you have those 2 turnovers, and later on, Holly throws another interception. So he had 2 interceptions on the day. And so you turn the ball over 3 times. Illinois State scores on those, and it's hard to come back from that. And so I think those turnovers, they struggled with that, turning the ball over. And just the total yardage, Eastern had 192 yards total offense. Illinois State had 518. And so the defense was top in the nation last year with forcing turnovers and everything. And that's what led to them having the year they did last year. And I thought, and the defense for the first few games was there, right? Like you're seeing it. But Illinois State was, once you turn the ball over and they have good field position over and over and over again, and your defense is always constantly on the field, it is hard to make those same plays that they were making last year. And they were able to force Illinois State to 2 turnovers, so they were doing it. They fumbled it. We got an interception. But then they were just, because of the situation they were in and the way Illinois State was still able to run the football, it opened up that pass game. And the pass game, it was just big chunk plays. It wasn't necessarily, dinking and dunking down the field. It was big crossing routes over the middle. Rittenhouse, the Illinois State quarterback, had 228 passing yards, and he had 3 touchdown passes. One of them was the flea flicker, which I guarantee Coach Wilkerson was losing his mind on the flea flicker because, years ago, the flea flicker got everybody. Now, when you watch it, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And when it does work, it's only been a couple yards to give up a touchdown. I know he was probably furious. Illinois State had 253 yards rushing as well. So the Illinois State offensive line was controlling the line of scrimmage. And I guarantee you Eastern was very upset with that. But everything changes when you're losing. Eastern comes out and scores in the second, but so is Illinois State. So now you're down 21 to 7.5. So your game plan has to change defensively and offensively, and that's what Eastern was doing. And Eastern has really good guys on offense. And so to see this happen was a little bit frustrating for them. I guarantee it was. Flowers, their running back, still had his same type of game. Same game. He had 117 yards on the ground and a touchdown. He's a very good running back for Eastern. He's going to be in the record books. They have athletes at receiver. It was just Illinois State's defense, I think, was being very physical. Mirza, very good wide receiver, only had 2 catches for 19 yards. Pearson, 17 yards. Gibson, 16 yards. And I could go on, and they only had 87. So when they're not even able to pass the ball very well, it doesn't help. I know your game plan is probably to run the ball, but now that Holly was just struggling. And he played well last year, transfer from Georgetown, played well last year. I thought he was playing okay this season, and then they have Dowling coming. He's 2 or 3 for 15 yards. And so this could also be chalked up as it just wasn't their day, which it does stink to say because it's your rival game, right? And I'm not speaking for Coach Wilkerson, and I'm not trying to put Eastern down, because when you look at Eastern's schedule, there's still plenty of optimism that you can have, but it's not easy. Lindenwood's a good football team. SEC Missouri is a good football team. Tennessee State, then UT Martin, and then going to turn into a rival game, if it isn't already, is Western Illinois, Gardner-Webb, Charleston Southern, Tennessee Tech. There's still a window to get to the playoffs, right? There's still that window that that is there for them. But I'm not going to speak for Coach Wilkerson. But from trying to speak from a fan perspective, I went to the school there, and speaking from a coach, they're going to have to regroup here is the best way to put it, is to regroup, right? Saying, hey guys, what is the difference between, you don't even want to bring up last year, right? And I'll give you insight. Like our football team where I coach at last year, we made the playoffs, and it was the first time the school made the playoffs since 2014. We won the first round playoff game. We make it to the second round, which was awesome. And I've slipped up a couple times saying, well, what's the difference from last year? And I always remember the late coach Mike Leach. There's a video out there where he freaks out. It's a lot of cursing. It's after they had that amazing 11-2 year, and it's the next year. I think they beat Baylor. but it just was, they didn't beat them in the style that he thought, and the season wasn't going the way they thought. And he made comments of saying, like, who made that play? Michael Crabtree made that play. So-and-so made that play, not you, and stuff like that. So I think they have to kind of regroup here and say, okay, yes, we did these things last year, but we're a different team. Even it could be that's the great thing about sports. You got the same exact players. You could have the exact same game plan. You could go into practice. You could have a Wednesday practice. You could just reprint the Tuesday practice. Everything's exactly the same time, the drill, how many reps, everything, and it will be different, right? So they have to kind of regroup here and say, okay, we were at Illinois State. We were moving the football at the beginning, and then the air gets taken out of our balloon because we turned the ball over. Then it gets taken out of our balloon a little bit more when we give up a big play. And it takes out of a balloon even more when we throw an interception. And then they march down and score. Now everything has changed. Like, we cannot afford those things. We have to have long, sustaining drives. And if we don't score, we don't score. But it's giving our defense time to relax. And if you're the defense, you're going, okay, we were able to make all these turnovers last year. Maybe we got to regroup here and say, okay, we can't run the scheme type of stuff that we were doing. And we have to be able to tackle, and we have to be able to fly around. But then I think we have to be okay with, like Illinois. I described Illinois' defense. We have to be okay with the big plays, right? But if you look at Illinois' defense, they don't give up tons of big plays. And if they give up tons of big plays, they're not really scoring. And that's kind of where Eastern, I think, has to regroup and say, Illinois State's a good football team. We competed with Northwestern. Indiana State, we allowed Indiana State to stick around. So when's the point where we wake up and say, we're Eastern Illinois. This is not how we play. This is not how we execute. And we're going to put our foot down and churn it. You put your foot down and churn it and say, okay, like, we're going to play better, right? And so I think that's kind of where they have to regroup. Illinois State just was able to kind of throw it wherever they wanted. Even when it was short passes, their receivers were breaking off tackles and making plays. Their quarterback had time to throw in the pocket. So I know that they're going to look at the D-line and say, hey, we've got to be able to hit this freaking quarterback. That we're going to have to be able to do that as it goes on. Their linebackers have to fly around. I coached one of their I didn't coach him, but he played defense. Jeremy Shockey, I coached at Lombard East. He was a senior. I didn't coach defense, so I was never really I was around him, but we were able to have just an offense and defense, but I was around him. He's a very competitive guy, and he's a leader in that linebacking room. So I know he's going to be watching him get after the high school kids. He's going to be able to get after them there, but you just can't turn the ball over either. And I know those coaches are telling them that they're going to regroup. I think they're going to have to make some tweaks on offense and defense about scheme and try to fix all that and just be able to have some confidence, And like I said, it sucks. Go back and rewatch the Illinois State game. The first drive, I'm watching it and I'm like, oh my God, like they're back. They've got it. And then turn the ball over. Okay. They have a couple of good plays, throw an interception. And it just kind of takes it all out. And I think the fact that they felt like they could have beaten more than what they did, that they kind of let the Northwestern game slip away from them, bothered. And you just mentally, as players, you have these flashbacks. And but I'm not taking anything away from Illinois State. They're always a good football team. They're very well coached, and they just have their culture and their standards set in place, and they just are able to get these players because it's a football school. And I'm sorry about the other sports. So I think they're going to regroup. They're going to have to have a clean slate coming to Jesus moment and look at Hawley and say, and the thing is, you want to stick with him, but if he's struggling, you're going to have to go to a backup quarterback, right? And I think it's frustrating for Flowers because he is a good running back. He had a good game, 19 carries, 117 yards. That's a good game. But I think they're going to have to look at their offensive guys and say, hey, we've got some talented wide receivers here. We're going to have to step up, and we're going to have to finish, and we're going to have, that was the big thing last year was they were able to finish. They won a lot. Last year, they won 14-13, I believe, against Illinois State. So they are going to have to learn how to finish. They're going to have to learn some of that stuff. And that's what happens. You have a team last year and you lose probably some of those. I don't know how many players they lost, whether it was graduation. I don't think they lost a lot in the transfer portal. And they're just going to have to learn how to finish. And so they are going to figure it out. Their coaches are too good and too experienced to not figure it out. But I think they're going to have to, and it might have happened today. Maybe hopefully they brought him in today or tomorrow, and they're going to have a, I call it come to Jesus moment, or like a clean slate. Like, hey, we're going to have to like start over, right? We're going to have to figure out who we are. We're going to have to figure this out quick because we're not FBS where they play 12 games, right? They play less games, and it's tougher to get in the playoffs. And because Eastern Illinois, they were 8-3 last year and did not make the playoffs. So they are now sitting at 1-3. They're going to have to win all their games or just kind of see how it plays out. And they can. And the players are going to have to understand you're not going to go blow a team out 31-7. Maybe you're a team like I talked about with Illinois. You're not a team that's going to blow people out like that. And that's okay. That is totally fine. Our game Friday night, we won 28-21, and it was amazing. So it's okay to be that type of team. And so I think Coach Wilkerson and company are going to figure it out. They have experienced players there, and the coaching staff's great. They're going to figure it out, but they got to figure it out very quickly before their next game. And their next game is against Lindenwood. And Lindenwood, when you hear Lindenwood, is football, right? Like it's a football school. And so that they're going to have to figure it out. And they play on the 28th. They play at 2 p.m. And maybe that's another thing. They've been playing these games at like 6. Maybe Eastern just plays better at 2 p.m., but they're going to have a 5 p.m. game later on in the season when they play Tennessee State. But the rest of the games are at 2 and 12. So maybe that's it. I don't know. But they're going to have to figure out pretty quick. They're going to maybe have to tweak some things. Maybe they have to change how they practice, maybe change their practice plan and everything else. But I didn't see them quit. So the positive thing is they haven't quit. They're going to figure it out. And that's it. They just got to take care of the ball, and their defense is just going to have to come alive and say, we have to force more turnovers. We've got to stop people on third down. We can't give up these big plays over and over and over again that lead to scoring plays. And they're going to figure it out. And I think they will. So that's it for this episode of Bleed Blue. Like and subscribe to the Coach Steve Show YouTube channel to find the Bleed Blue segment where it's everything Eastern Illinois athletics the best I can. I have an ILL, INI segment for everything in Illinois athletics, University of Illinois. There's the Bear Down segment where myself and Zach Kyleman, we try to break down the Bears games and talk about everything Chicago Bears on that. And then I have talks with high school football coaches and college coaches from all levels, JUCO, NAIA, Division III, Division II, FCS and FBS and Power 5 all over. So check that out. And then I also have some talks with some media personnel or media personalities and try to grow that too. So it can only grow if you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment in the comment section down below. Subscribe and follow it on Apple and iTunes and even Spotify if that's where you get your podcasts. Follow me on X and Instagram and TikTok and all that stuff. It only grows if you do that. It doesn't, do that. It takes you about, if you do all that, it probably takes you 25, 30 seconds, to be honest with you. So if you could do that for me, I appreciate it. So comment down below your thoughts on Eastern Illinois football and all athletics. Do all that stuff for me. Be greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for watching and or listening. This is Coach Steve. We will see you guys next.